A yeshiva student was betrothed to a young woman in a nearby town. On the day of the wedding, as he sat alone in the house, he looked out the window and saw a beautiful woman passing by. She raised her eyes to his and then walked on. But that one glance filled him with passion, and he made a wish that his own bride, whom he had never met, would be as beautiful. Later that day, as the bride and groom stood beneath the chuppah, the bridegroom looked up and saw the same woman who had passed by his window. She was standing close to the canopy, so that he glimpsed her several times during the ceremony, and she gazed shamelessly at the bridegroom, who fell under her spell, and even as he was wed to another, in truth he bound his soul to her. That night in the bridal chamber, the bridegroom found the other woman waiting for him instead of the one he had wed. Greatly confused, he said to her, "How is it you are here instead of my bride?" And she replied, "It was I that you wed, is that not true?" And all at once the bridegroom became afraid, for he remembered how he had bound himself to her. And he said, "Who are you? Where do you come from?" She answered, "My name is Nahama. My mother's name is Lilit." "No," he cried, and he backed away from the demoness, for that is what she was. "Have you forgotten your craving for me?" she answered, and she dropped her gown. And when he saw his desire return tenfold, and he gave himself up to that daughter of demons. Afterwards, however, he was filled with fear and remorse. What had he done? And as he looked around, he saw that the mirror on the wall was covered, as is done at the time of Shiva when somebody has died. But never for a bride and groom. Quaking with fear, he asked, "Where are we?" And she replied, "This is the palace of illusion. Some call it the hollow of the sling." And the student jumped back in terror, for that was the very pit of hell, and he saw that his soul was imperiled. And without considering the consequences, he ran away from there as fast as he could. All at once he found himself back in the same town where his wedding had taken place. He went from house to house searching for his bride, for he was certain that if he could only find her, he could break the bond with Elite's daughter. But no one in that town had ever heard of her, even though she had lived there all her life. And when he had searched everywhere, he left that city and traveled from one city to the next, always hoping to find her. For 300 years he wandered without finding any trace of his bride. By then he had lost all track of time and wandered at random from place to place. It was then that he came to a house that seemed strangely familiar, and he knocked, as he had done so many times before. A voice told him to come inside, and when he did, he found himself back in the bridal chamber with the demoness still reclining on the bed. That is when he realized to his horror that he had never escaped her at all. The instant he understood, the demoness disappeared, and the room vanished as well, and the bridegroom found himself still standing beneath the bridal canopy. The ceremony was still taking place, and when the bridegroom realized where he was, he looked out to the place where the demoness had stood, and there he saw instead the face of the serpent. And this time, after the wedding vows, as he crushed the glass beneath his foot, he imagined it was the head of the serpent that was being crushed. And that night he clung to his true bride with all of his being, and at last he escaped the hollow of the sling.